Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking,
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
because this is the second time I've tried to put a set of aftermarket fairings on my CBR 600 F4i here, which when I bought it had absolutely trashed fairings. And this time, a company called Amotopart reached out to me and they were like, hey, we saw your last fairing video. Why don't you try these instead? And I was like, okay, let's give them a shot. That is right, today we are taking a look at these Amotopart fairings for my 2006 Honda CBR 600 F4i. Because a lot of guys out there buy a sport bike that's got rashed up fairings, they look at the price of new ones online from the manufacturer, and they have a moment of just absolute panic.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Now, the last time we did this, we had a set of Repsol Honda fairings that were a massive, massive disappointment. And I'm gonna tell you right now, after unboxing these fairings, these things are actually really, really nice. Now, I do wanna let you know that Amotopart did send me this fairing kit, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but I'm gonna be brutally honest about these things because last time I was extremely unimpressed. So I wanna make sure that you guys out there are spending your money on good stuff. And now let's get these things on the bike and see if they're everything they're cracked up to be. And trust me to forget the coolest part of these fairings. You can get a set yourself for 10% off by clicking the link down in the description and using the code SPITE10. Treat your bike to some new threads. It deserves it. Click that link down in the description below, and again, that code is SPITE10 for 10% off. Now, before we dive into actually installing these, I did want to take you through a quick little side-by-side, but these are the fairings that I got last time, and as you can see, they arrived cracked. They had these big scuffs and scratches in them, and the paint was so weak that like you could scratch it. It's not doing it now, but you could scratch it with just like a super light brush of anything other than a fingernail. The best thing I could say is that the paintwork is adequate on here, whereas if we're looking at the Amotopart, this is much more what you would expect from like a stock setup. It looks really, really nice. There are some slight rough edges right there, but it's small enough that I don't really notice it. Everything else is a little bit better done, and I can tell there are more coats of clear on here than are on those fairings right there. So I'm expecting these fairings to work a lot better just because they are a little bit more rugged right out of the box. There are some things that I know I'm gonna have to modify, like on the tail section right there, because of where my key cylinder is, I'm gonna have to cut a hole. That's no big deal. The biggest thing is to make sure that all the other bolt holes line up, because last time they definitely did not. So let's get to work. We're gonna test fit this fairing real quick because I learned from bitter experience last time that this is where like the failures like to occur. I'm just gonna do a quick little test fit here. This needs to go up under there and come up to here. And then these need to kind of smush like that. Haha, nice! Fits like a glove. Now I need to get a bunch of speed washers on here. Wow, that actually looks really fucking good. Nice. This bike hasn't looked this good ever since I've owned it. All right, so as you can see, I've test fit the other fairing here, the other side fairing. And I will say, while the fit isn't perfect, it is so much better than the last set. So the biggest problem I'm having right here is the pipe would be resting right on the fairing right there. But I do have this Kaufman exhaust that I'm gonna slap on there, so we'll see if that works. Otherwise, I can just take off a little bit of material there. And then on the other side, right there, you can see the pipe is resting on the fairing. That's another one where I just have to remove a little bit of material. I'm having a sense that this is a California bike maybe, and so the exhaust is slightly different than global market stuff, so maybe that's a problem. But I will say, everything else on this bike fits really nicely. I did have to tug and pull just a little bit.
That's what she said.
Right here, but I'm thinking that it's more to do with the wires that I have in here just causing issues. And you'll notice that right there, that's the only damage to the fairings that I caused. Right there, I just had one of the speed washers sitting on there and I had to kind of pull it past, and so it chipped the paint just a little bit. But it took me rubbing a speed washer pretty darn hard on there to actually cause damage. So unlike those last fairings, where if you looked at them funny, they would scratch, these are much nicer. There is just a subtle imperfection right there, but I mean, it is subtle. And when you look at the rest of the bike, because it's not very noticeable, it just sort of blends right in with the rest of the damage. So I like the way it looks. All right, I'm gonna pull this fairing back off so that I can remove this boat anchor of an exhaust. Holy shit. That's 3.5 foot and 15 pounds. All right, let's just see how deafeningly loud this pipe is. Oh, you know what? It's not bad. That's actually just like classic 600 noise. That's not bad. Yeah, look at that little bad boy right there. It's really nice, actually, and it's made in the USA, which is awesome. I love that. And the biggest thing I was worried about is that it would be deafeningly loud. I'm sure when I'm like full song, it's gonna be pretty noisy, but honestly, I really like it. It looks a lot sleeker too, and I'm thinking now I'm not gonna have nearly as many clearance issues with my fairing. So let's try to fit the fairing back up. I'd say the fit for the exhaust is adequate. You will need to modify some stuff though. But again, at least all the bolt holes line up. Last time I tried to put one of these fairings on, the bolt holes were miles off. Like, I don't know if they were working with an F4i that had been wrecked or something, because like the bolt holes would be misaligned by like an inch. So this is such a relief. It fits so well on this bike. Almost as if it was designed to fit on an F4i. Who would have thunk? Cool. All right, let's make sure that the exhaust is like on there. It's a little bit wibbly wobbly because Kaufman wants you to rivet, and I'm not riveting it in place because I still want it to be removable. That is, as we say in the business, on there. All right, these do need to get clearance just a little bit. So let me bust out the Dremel. All right, take two. Needed to get those in the right way. And now they are. Just 2 seconds with a Dremel's all it took. Ta-da! All right, let's get this tail section off of here. This is the last big piece. Ta-da! Whoops. Now I need to take the stuff out of here and put it in the new tail. Not gonna lie, the fit on this part isn't great. It's not the worst, but you do have to smush it into place. The nice thing is, once you do this, there's no real point to taking this on and off. There's no reason to take it on and off because everything's easy to access unless you have to get to the ECU, which you don't have to do on this bike because it's really reliable. Let's get this all done. Wrap it up. Just gotta cut one hole right here, and then we're done. So, center between these holes, about 1/2 inch back. Maybe 1 inch back for the center of the drill. A little bit bigger than 3/4 of an inch. Okay. All right, now I need to just Dremel that hole out just a wee bit. Perfect. Like, literally perfect. I'm getting pretty good at this. All right, I got the key cylinder in there, so let's knock this out. There. Alrighty, folks. Welcome to day 2. I just ended up having to sit and wait just a little bit to film this because I had some other stuff going on. It was a little late in the day when I installed all this stuff. It actually took me just a little bit longer because I wanted to go back over everything and make sure it was all good before I actually came out here. Like, one of the main things that I was worried about was down here where the exhaust is. I put a bunch of the heat shielding that they provided into the fairings. I wanted to make sure it was actually working because if you don't do it right, actually the exhaust itself will burn the paint off of the it'll burn the paint off the bottom of the fairings and it'll start to look ugly. So I wanted to make sure that I did that right. And then when I installed this, I actually cut a little hole in the windscreen for the camera on the Chiji because I have the front facing dash cam right here and I have the rear facing dash cam there, and I wanted to make sure that it was working, that I could actually see forward. But yeah, I cut a little hole in there so it's adjustable up and down. I don't know. I think it's looking really, 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 really good. One thing I do want to mention while we're out here on the side of the road before we get going, these fairings are so much more robust than the other ones that I was working with. The paint on here is much, much higher quality, and I didn't notice a propensity for it to scuff if you accidentally looked at it wrong. However, these are like normal fairings, and if you scuff them up, you know, if you're letting them sit on the ground, they will scuff. They're more rugged than the other ones I looked at, but they are still painted plastic. So don't treat them like you're gonna, you know, don't go off-roading with it and expect them to come out okay, right? One thing I didn't include here was the under cover that goes right here. There's a specific bib that goes there. That was just too much work. And if I wanted to separate the fairings again, I didn't want to have to undo 1,000 bolts on the underside of the bike. So I just have these bolts right here, which were actually supposed to be push pins, but I used bolts because it's easier. They gave me a lot of speed nuts. And yeah, I like the look of the black bolts on the blue. The gas tank, the original gas tank, the blue is less saturated. The paint is less saturated, so it does stand out. If I wanted to, I could put the tank cover on here. I just don't care. It's close enough that really what it looks like is these fairings are brand new and that gas tank is 20 years old. So, and that's exactly what it is. Brand new fairings versus 20-year-old gas tank. So, you know, a couple of dings and dents and scratches here and there. That's why I went with these fairings. There are ways to make sure that a tank cover doesn't feel all squishy. You can actually use foam, like the heat shielding foam that's on here, to actually shim it all out, and that would work. But let me turn the bike over for you. It may die if I put the kickstand down. So I'm still waiting for the sniffers to kind of do their job. Once those run through a few cycles, it will look a little bit better, or will ride a little better. I do want to apologize too. This camera is going to see a lot of this. Nothing I can really do about it. There's not great places to mount up. Oh man, that truck just left a ton of asphalt right where I'm going to be riding. That's nice. Let's get rolling. Yep, that's what a 600 sounds like. I haven't had a inline 4 that screams like this in a long time. That's fun. That Kaufman exhaust, I'm actually surprised how quiet it is at idle. It's nice at idle. It's not terribly loud. On the over rev like this, it's not bad. And you know, on the pipe, it's actually not that bad either. It's just generally not as loud as I would have thought for a stupid shorty pipe that's just like that long. It's really well baffled. I'm super impressed. But let's talk a little bit more about these fairings. The biggest thing that ruined the other set for me was how bad the fitment was. The fitment was very rough. There were big sections of the fairings that just, the bolt holes were not lined up, not even a little bit. It felt like they used a completely different CBR. I don't know where they thought the bolt holes were supposed to go, but they certainly were not where they were supposed to be. This time around, they're basically perfect. Ooh, man, those brakes are good. I forgot about how good the RCS is on this bike. But yeah, so the fitment. There are some spots, I'm not gonna lie, there are some spots where the fitment is not perfect, where I kind of had to pull the fairings a little bit to get them to line up. You saw probably a little bit of gap right here where the main front cowl meets the main fairing. On both sides, there's just, at the very top, there's a little bit of excess gappage going on there. It's not bad. It's maybe a 1/4 of an inch, but you know what? I'm not gonna fault them for that too bad. The fairings themselves are not that expensive, so when you consider the fact that you're getting a bargain, I'm willing to give them a 1/4 of an inch. I'm not willing to give them bolt holes in the wrong place. I also have a feeling that this front cowl on this bike isn't lined up perfectly. I think I have just some excess stuff in the front that's causing wires to push the cowl forward. I'm not 100% sure, but
it feels like there's a little bit of extra stuff in there that is just causing the fit to be a little bit off. Now, the most annoying thing that I had to deal with on this set of fairings was actually back here at the tail. The cowl that was included, it was really tight. It was really, really, really tight to put on. I'm not sure why. What's the best way for me to describe it? Imagine if this was where the normal fairing was, you know, it was shaped like this. This fairing was kind of squozing in like that. The tips down here at the top of the cowl, let me see if I can point to it when I get on the other side of this corner. This section, it's basically like a U shape, and they were pointed inwards. So I had to widen it a little, like I had to pull it wide to squeeze it on, and it didn't really want to go on, but it did find its happy place. Once it got in the right spot, it settled right in. It was really hard to get it in place. Some of that stuff is case specific because, you know, I've got a whole bunch of extra mods on here. It's not stock, so, you know, your mileage may vary. Oh yeah. Oh, I love that sound. I love that sound. Oh, I know. If the folks over at Kaufman, I apologize. It took so long to get to this, but you guys made a great pipe. You made a very good pipe. But let's start rounding out my thoughts on the actual fairings themselves. So, for the price of entry, these things are really, really solid. And again, they do a bunch of custom colorways and stuff too. So if you wanted to swap out how your bike looks, you can. The only thing that I really wish that this had that it doesn't is a clear windscreen. I get why they put a blacked out one in here. You can kind of see through it just a little bit. And a lot of people like the dark look, but this is a bike that's going to live on a racetrack. But other than that, this is the nicest this bike has looked since I bought it. I'm so glad Amotopart reached out and were like, yeah, try these on for size, because now my bike actually looks good. It took so long, but now the bike looks good. It looks done. Are they as nice as stock fairings? No. They're not as nice as stock fairings, but nothing is. Stock fairings are also extremely expensive. You could easily spend $700 on one stock fairing, whereas this is $700 for the whole set. I would argue that some slight fitment issues here and there are okay. Like, they're so minimal. And it sort of completes the whole package of this motorcycle. It's finally done. Well, no, it's not done. I lied. I need to put the new suspension in here. Once the new suspension is in, then it's done. But yeah, huge shout out to the folks over at Amotopart for sending over these fairings. It is such a nice way to round out the looks on this motorcycle, because it was so ugly before. Completely transformed the way this bike looks. It actually looks like a presentable motorcycle. And if you're interested in checking them out, click the link down in the description below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.